Namaskar, sir.
Namaste. How are
Great.
you?
So I'm good, sir. How have you been?
Good.
Cool. I think it's 2 minutes past 8:30, so I think we can start officially. So, well, hello and welcome once again to another episode of Kitaabi Baatein. I'm Abhishek, also known as Books Wale Bhaiya. My guest today is Professor P R Mukund, whom I'm interviewing for the second time, but officially for everyone, it's for the first time. Before we start, Professor P R Mukund is the author of this very beautiful little book, The 10 Gunas for Living. And I would say a very great introduction or orientation to the Vedic life, the gunas, what we should have in our life. A wonderful, very well written book. Before we start, I would like to give a brief introduction of Professor Mukund. Professor P R Mukund is an electronics engineer who has spent 36 years in academia and 6 years in industry. He is a globally acclaimed expert in the field of analog and radio frequency integrated circuit design and has led many research projects for both the government and the semiconductor industry. He has published extensively in international journals and participated in conferences worldwide. Until recently, he was teaching electrical engineering at Rochester Institute of Technology in New York. After moving to the US in the 70s to becoming an engineer and then a professor, Professor Mukund is now helping people understand and embrace the Vedic way of life. In his book, explains how the 10 gunas can actually transform your life, which this book is all about. And I strongly urge you to, read this book. So, sir, so this is about your introduction. So I would like to start by asking, you moved from electronics engineering to this Vedic way of life or spiritual way of life, as one may call it. So how did this change actually happen? Which eventually manifested in the book as well. But if you talk about the Vedic way, how did that happen?
In the first place, they're not mutually exclusive. There is a misconception among many people that the modern Western science and Vedic science are mutually exclusive. I used to think like that too until I was in my 30s. And in my late 30s is when I started looking at Vedic science. And fortunately, within a few years, I found my guru. What I have realized is that it's all the same. It's really not different. It is something that, the Vedic science, if I can put it in a nutshell, I would probably say that matter and energy always go hand in hand, right? I mean, you cannot separate the two.
Right.
And it's like two sides of a coin. So if you look at the universe, there is matter and there is energy.
Right.
I think everybody can agree on that.
Absolutely.
So the question is, which is more important? Well, they're both important. And so observable science, when I say observable, I'm talking about being able to perceive with what we call, if I may use a couple of Sanskrit words, jnanendriyas, that is sensory organs. That is something that will work very well with material science. That is in with respect to matter, right? It could be physics, chemistry, anything. Our science is not that it doesn't look at material science, but it focuses on the science of energy.
Right.
And because energy cannot be perceived using the same, again, not that it cannot be perceived, but it cannot be perceived using the same techniques as science for matter. Right. So people say that, oh, it's not scientific. Oh, it's very scientific. Trust me, it's very, very scientific. It's just that it's a different domain, but the two are interlinked. So I don't see that as two different things. So I did not switch from my engineering profession to what somebody may say, spiritual life or something like that. I think it's the same thing.
They're not exclusive or not separate that way. Right?
Yeah, and it's not like a sudden switch or something like that.
Right.
But what started me looking in that direction is some personal incident when my father passed away.
Okay.
So I started pursuing, basically, I had a simple question. I was an academic at that time also. So my basic question is, what is birth and what is death? And so I started, that was my starting point, and I struggled quite a bit. Initially, I kept reading books and all that. That didn't really help me. I also spoke to some people, like I said before, when I met my guru, all that was sorted out.
Okay. And as you treaded on this path, which we agree that's not mutually exclusive, but as you have been into this way of life since past decades, so how did this book specifically, came about? When did you thought about writing it, and how did you zero in on this is what specifically I want to write about? How did
Yeah,
that happen?
yeah. So what happened was that I realized over time that what I may call uh, Vaidika karma had been sort of very loosely translated in English as rituals,
Yeah,
Hindu rituals.
in rituals.
And that bothered me because I realized that behind every action, there has to be a thought. Thoughtless,
Absolutely.
thoughtless action is not karma. So the question is the thought and the intention, what is it based upon? It's based upon jnana, knowledge, right? So I realized that the reason things indeed had become just rituals, people you know, doing some random things without really knowing why they were doing it or what the intention was not having the desired outcome.
Right.
That's that's point number one. Point number two, I realized that lately, when you look at especially like business schools and not just business schools, everybody, the bottom line is everybody wants to be successful, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you do. I don't think anybody comes along and says, I want to fail. Everybody wants to succeed in whatever they do. So when they look at the models, when you look at what is a model for a path towards success, I noticed that there are a lot of thoughts, a lot of books, a lot of theories, many of them coming from the Western basis,
Yeah.
cultural basis.
Yes.
And so when you look at that, success was translated to making a lot of money or things of that nature, right?
True.
Like if you look at a startup company, uh, one of the things that the VCs will ask you if you go for funding, they will say, "What is your exit strategy?"
Correct.
So the thing is, when you start a business, you should not be looking for exiting.
Right.
You would have an exit strategy only if you want to make some quick money and get the heck out of there, right?
True. Very true.
So the question is the very definition of success for us coming from Vedika Sampradaya, Vedic culture is very different.
Right.
It's very, very different. So I realized that this Western notion, not to put it down or anything, it's a different way of looking at it. But I felt that our way of looking at not only success, but the path for success had actually models that go back thousands of years.
Right.
And it had been forgotten. And so when I started discussing with, when I had a discussion with my editor at Rupa Publications, a very nice gentleman, we had a long discussion and he felt that this would be a good topic to write about because especially young people are very focused on success,
Yes.
as they should be. They should be.
They should
And
be.
so he felt that highlighting in a book that's of a size that doesn't intimidate them,
Yes.
because if you write a big thick book, nobody will read it, right? So
Really.
just a small book that will, in a crisp manner, highlight all the 10 steps in this particular model would be a good thing. And that's what led to this.
So So how, in a nutshell, if you were to explain these gunas, a brief overview. I have specific questions related to the specific gunas, which I'll talk about a bit later. How, in a nutshell, if you were to explain what these gunas are about and how they can adopting them, how can actually lead to success and a better life, as we call it.
I guess to answer that question, first I have to define our definition of success.
Perfect.
Right?
Right.
Uh,
Of course.
so if you look at our tradition in general, there's something we refer to, which I'm sure most of your viewers must be familiar, which we refer to as Chaturvida Purushartha. And Chaturvida means four forms. Purushartha, Artha is resource, Purusha, that is you and me. So, what are the four things of value
Right.
to any of us?
Right.
It doesn't matter who you are, right? So, these four things are, there is dharma, there is artha, kama, and moksha. Right? Those are the four things. Now, our focus normally is on artha.
Yes.
And when you look at artha, it is not just money, by the way. Money is just one aspect of it.
One aspect.
So resources, well, as a matter of fact, I would claim that knowledge is also a resource, right?
Okay.
So,
Correct.
so there's so many resources, and money is just one of them. That's all. So, if you just focus on money, and just that, even in artha, that's not everything. It's just one aspect
One
you're
aspect.
focusing,
Yes.
right?
True.
So, given that, what is actually success for an individual, right?
Right.
And that is best explained using the concept of, see, in Vedic culture, there are two things that they use a lot. What happens, Abhishek ji, is that words, in any language, it can be English, it can be Hindi or my mother tongue, whatever, it doesn't matter what the language is, words change meaning with time.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
like something 200 years ago might have meant something, but today that same word may mean something else.
Absolutely.
Because it depends on the context. So in our culture, they realize that, and they use two things. One is numerology. Numbers are very important for us, right? The second thing is symbolism. They use symbols, right?
Yes.
So for artha, like when you talk about success, the symbol that is used is chakra, like a
Yeah.
wheel, right? So that's why you go to some temple or something like that, you'll see the deity having shankha on one side and chakra on the other side.
Yes.
That represent dharma and artha. So the question is, this chakra, the wheel of success, if you will, what is that?
Right.
Well, any wheel, in the first place, why do you need a wheel? Well, let us say I'm going for a walk. So I walk for, say, 15 minutes, spend some energy. I get
Right.
from point A to point B, right?
Correct.
Now, if I have a bicycle, which has wheels, of course, and I spend the same amount of energy, I'll go farther.
Correct.
So in life, if I want to go farther, then I do need this concept of a wheel.
Right.
We're not talking about physical wheel, but concept of a wheel.
Concept of
So if you focus on that and say, why is a wheel useful? Well, in the
Right.
first place, the most important thing in a wheel is the axle,
Right.
because it's the axle that will drive the wheel.
Correct.
The second thing is you have the spokes,
Yes.
and the third thing is you have the rim, right?
Correct.
Now, a wheel that is not circular is a very bad wheel.
Of course.
And a wheel where the axle is not there is worthless.
Absolutely.
So if you translate this to react, that's a symbol. It's just symbol, right?
Right.
So the question is this: axle in the center is something steady. So I have to ask myself, no matter what I do, Like you said in my introduction, I used to be in industry for a few years, went to academia, then there's the quote unquote the spiritual side and so on. Then there's a personal life. So many things are there for all of us. The question is this: in all of those things, it doesn't matter, personal, professional, whatever, right? Is there one driving principle that is constant in my life? And if so, what is it? You cannot have different principles for different aspects of my life.
Right.
So if I have one driving principle, whatever that might be, for me, I can answer what that is, but for different people, it may be different things. But is there one constant driving principle? Secondly, the spokes. These are all the different aspects of my life, right? We are connected to so many things. And the thing is that if each spoke represents one different aspect of my life, one thing, all the spokes have to be attached to the axle.
Absolutely.
On the other side, they're in different directions, but there's a rim that connects all of that. Right? So, which means that every single thing I do should affect everything else.
Absolutely.
Right? Every single thing it should affect. For example, if I talk to you and your viewers, in directly or indirectly, that should affect. You may say, how does it affect your grandchildren? Or some children, grandchildren. The thing is, it does in a way. It may be very subtle, but every single aspect of my life at the other end has to be connected.
Absolutely.
That is the concept of a wheel. And even if you read the book, I talk about that in the introduction part, I talk about it, is that is our definition of success. And when you find that, you'll see that you can go very, very far in life. And before I let me just say one little thing in this regard. If you ask me, are you successful? I would say yes. Not in a bragging way, but when I look at different aspects of my life, success is always differential. That is, where do you start and where did you end up, right? So I can tell you, like, in related to work, for example, when I came to the US as a young man a long time ago in 1974, I had no education, no money, nothing. And first 2 years, I was working as a janitor. Then I was a technician and so on. So the point is that starting from there to ending up as, when I retired, they made me a professor emeritus. So again, I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that I moved from there to here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I look at all different aspects of my life, I see the differential.
Right.
So the question is, how did I get there? It's not because of any greatness on my part, but by following a well-defined path, a well-defined model, well-defined path. And you to work just like you to, pedal the bicycle. You cannot sit on a bicycle expect to go somewhere. Right. So similarly, we have to work hard. But the thing is, just working hard alone is not enough. You need to have something that drives you much farther than what you would if you did not use that model.
Just like for the bicycle, you said it will take you to a destination faster, more efficiently. So that thing has to be there. Otherwise, if it's just like we walk, it's a manual process. Of course, you will reach a destination quite late, or you may, not reach at all. You may get tired and you may give up. That who will take so much of pain.
Well, actually, I would, if I may, I just want to say that unfortunately, if you reach late, that is okay. But in all our lives, we have a finite amount of time.
Right.
So question is, how far do you go? Because the time is fixed.
Absolutely.
So by using this model, you can go farther. So.
Absolutely. And I think if you look at it in terms of a model, I think this concept is used, everywhere. Even in business world, we see that any strategy or anything, we do call it a model. That this is what our model for success is, or our model for growth is. So the underlying idea is same, of course. The exact things which we do may be a little different from, say a company doing in terms of what you call a model, or you doing when we talk of spirituality or Vedic or anything. So this is broadly what your idea is. When as I read the book, I realized you talked about things like, for example, yoga. So that, as when we call it as one of the gunas. So I think one perception or misconception I would say people about yoga is only the set of physical exercises, which is actually Hatha Yoga. And yoga, it's a very deeper concept. It has 8 stages and everything. So how do you see yoga in this context, wherein I would say large number of people just think of it as a set of postures for physical health?
Yeah, actually, what you refer to as Hatha Yoga.
Yeah. Hatha
Um, it is. But that is actually Yogasana, right?
Asana.
So asana postures that can help not just body, by the way. It can definitely help mentally also, right? But the bottom line is not about improving one's health or something like that, which of course will happen as a byproduct. But
Absolutely.
yoga, as Sri Krishna explained in Bhagavad Gita, it's not my definition,
Right.
is all about balance, right? There are many different types of balance. I can share one with you.
Yes.
And again, even the Western science, when they study the brain and all that, they talk about it, the left side and the right side and so on. The thing is that most of us use both the intellect, which we call buddhi, the intellect on one side, and intuition on the other side.
Right.
So if you want to use Samskrita words for that, I would say buddhi on one side and sakshi on the other side. Okay. Uh, now, the question is this: if there is imbalance in my life, I may focus too much on the intellect. That is, I may analyze everything, But you see, the problem with that is when I do analysis, the analysis is a function of the data that is available to.
Yes.
And so when I have finite amount of data, it doesn't matter how smart I am or not smart I am.
Right.
The question is that even if you have fantastic intellectual capacity, when you're working it, when you don't know everything what's going on, and when you have finite amount of data, your intellectual activity can only result in so much for you.
Absolutely.
So there has to be yoga. One aspect of it is the balance between intuition on one side and intellect on the other side. For example, we may analyze something and say, "Oh, go do this," but something inside me is telling me, "Don't do it."
Right.
But there is no way. I cannot. If you ask, I may say, I really don't want to do this.
Right.
If somebody says, "Why?" I may not have a good answer for that, but something tells me that, it's dangerous, don't do it, right?
Right.
So, yoga is a balance between many different aspects. What the Chinese call yin and yang, So, there is a physical also, right? You know what happens, like when you get to my age, balance becomes a issue for
Yes.
some.
Yes.
Fortunately, I'm okay, but
Yeah.
for people in their 70s and 80s, balance is an issue,
Right.
even physically. But more important than that, I would claim, is mental balance. Because when there's no mental balance, yoga as referred to the mind, right? Then what happens is that things go all over the place. We may get confused, we may get depressed, we may suddenly get angry one day, or depressed one day, suddenly one day get overly excited, right?
Yes.
So you need, and again, this is not my theory. Shri Krishna said this in Bhagavad Gita. I'm just repeating using my own words. Is that, Arjuna asked Shri Krishna, He says, Sthita Pragnasya Kabhasha Samadhistasya Keshava. He says, who is a Sthita Prajna? Prajna is awareness, right? So Sthita means steady. So who is one with steady awareness, right? So the question is, yoga is more about being very steady.
Yeah.
Whether things are going according to my likes or not. Sometimes it may go like this, sometimes it may go like that.
Absolutely.
Because duality is a fact of life,
Yes.
right? Some days people are happy, sometimes they are sad, whatever, right? But to view everything with the same steady viewpoint, that is yoga. And and even going one step beyond that, I would say spiritual balance. So balance of the body, balance of the mind, balance of the intellect, and eventually, balance of the spirit itself.
Correct.
That is yoga.
That is. So, and you also talked of Prana Shakti. So as you understood it, yoga is not only the physical exercise, that is yogasana or hatha yoga, and that is strictly the physical exercises, the postures, yogasana as we call it. So the Prana Shakti, how would you explain that? What exact Prana Shakti? And would you say that yoga and Prana Shakti are somewhat kind of linked in that sense?
Now, by the way, I hope it's okay for me to use a few Samskrita words.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
by the way, Abhishekji, the reason I need to do that is that um, when we speak in English, every language is a external manifestation of a culture and a way of thought,
Yes.
right? So if you don't have a particular concept in your culture, there won't be any word for it.
Yes.
Right? So you can use some loose translation, but there won't be. So if you don't mind, here and there, I'll use a Samskrita word here and there, right?
Yeah.
So talking about Pranshakti, before we address that specific question, this Sharira, the human body, right? In our way of looking at it, we call that Sadhana Sharira. Sadhana Sharira. So this is a body, this is a Sharira that is designed. It is designed for sadhana.
Yes.
It's not a body designed for enjoyment.
Absolutely.
Now that it does not mean you shouldn't enjoy. Of course you should enjoy, but you should enjoy, you should be happy. It's not that we should do that. But it's not designed for that sole purpose.
Yes.
The very purpose of that is sadhana, right?
Correct.
So for it to be in good shape, you should always be doing sadhana.
Right.
Right? So having said that, again, according to our way of looking at things, we refer to this pancha kosha. There's 5 layers. Okay. So this physical body, we refer to this annamaya kosha. The physical body. The very next layer, okay, we'll skip that for 1 second. The third layer, we call manomaya kosha. Manomaya kosha is the mental layer. Now, even in the Western way of looking at things, they accept those 2 things. For example, the medicine related to the body, you call it physiology.
Yes.
The medicine, with respect to the mental layer, they call it psychology. Right? We agree on that. We also say, but except in our way of looking at things, the first kosha is annamaya kosha. The very next layer is pranamaya kosha. After pranamaya kosha, you have manomaya kosha. After that, we have something called vijnanamaya kosha. Then we have anandamaya kosha. So there are 5 layers. So let's not worry about the last 2. Let's just talk about the first 3, because we normally operate in those 3 regions.
Right.
So for us, pranamaya kosha, prana shakti is chalana shakti. That is, it is the energy that gives you the ability to move, not just physically, physically also, but for mental movement, for intellectual movement, and so on. Otherwise, you'll become lethargic.
Yes.
Okay? So lethargy is not good, obviously.
Right.
So we need movement, right? So the energy. So if you can, I always explain like this to my own shishyas, that if you look at these three layers, there's the body, there's the mind, and in between is this energy. So I tell them that it's sort of like a sandwich. So you have
Right.
two slices of bread, and in between two slices of bread, you put some nice things,
Right.
right? Now the thing is, the quality of the sandwich is both a function of the bread and what is in between.
Right.
Similarly, we can exercise all we want to keep my physical body in good shape. Even mentally, I may do meditation, whatever, to keep it in good shape. But what is also equally important, that's also important, but equally important is the energy.
Energy.
When you have that energy, what happens is that is the binding force between the mental layer and the physical layer.
Right.
Right? So what that means is this so-called mind-body interaction. People say, right, that if you have some disease, if you believe very strongly that it will go away, excuse me, it can actually sometimes go away. Right?
Right.
On the other hand, if you keep thinking that I'm a very sick person, it may actually manifest itself
Yes.
in physical sickness. Right? But it's not a direct connection. In between is the energy layer. So that was very important for us. So in any Vedic karma, right at the beginning, they'll ask you to do pranayama.
Yeah.
Right? Right at the beginning. In everything. So every day. So and that is one way. By the way, that's not just a breathing exercise. Just like yoga is not just
Not just
asanas.
this. Yes.
Yeah, pranayama is not just breathing, right?
Really.
It's much more than that. But it is one way of increasing the energy, making my energy layer stronger. So what
Yes.
happens is when you do that, even when you get older, you'll have plenty of energy and you want to do things. You never say, I just want to, take early retirement and sit
Yeah.
around doing nothing. You'll be very energetic, right?
Yes.
So that, by the way, even if you don't know all the words, all of us feel that. We
Yeah.
can actually feel it, right? When you're energetic, you can feel it. And
Absolutely.
and it's not a function of what you just eat or something like that, but much more than that. And that layer is pranshakti.
So yeah, I think that's very beautifully explained. So as you talked about the 10 gunas, but you talked about one thing which is the translation, and actually I wanted to ask a question. So as we know that many of the words, because all of this literature is mostly available in Sanskrit, and as we agree that not every word can be translated accurately, and because of most importantly the context. And as given that most people actually read in English, not in their mother tongue, what suggestion would you give to those people who are reading this in English? So how do they get that essence of those words when we know that majorly they would be reading in English? Because this is one issue, and we end up, holding I would say, a different meaning or a different perception about things, just because we think, okay, because it's this in English, so it is not that. So how do you what do you suggest to those who want to walk on this path, that how should they take care of this thing, which can lead at times to misinterpretations?
Yeah, that's actually a very important question
Yeah.
because what is happening, I noticed that when I come to Bharat, I come very often every year. And even though I've been away for 49 years, I'm culturally very, very rooted in our land. It's Karma Bhumi, our land, our culture, our knowledge, and so on. I'm very rooted in that. And one thing I notice when I come on visits is that when I talk to people, lot of younger people don't even know their own mother tongue,
Yeah. True. True.
you know, and many of them cannot even read or write in their mother tongue.
In their mother tongue. That's true.
Because there is this, I don't know, I cannot blame British or anybody. It's our own fault. Is it
Absolutely.
over the last 100 years or whatever?
Yeah.
We somehow thought that good command over English is equivalent to sophistication.
Sophistication. And that's true. That's true.
That's not true at all. In my opinion, that's not at all true.
Right.
They're two, they have nothing to do with each other, in my opinion, right? Every Bharatiya, every Indian language, if you want to call it that, has its roots, except perhaps Tamil. Anyway, I don't want to get into those things, but the point is that in our different languages, right? The concept, the words for the concepts are there. So my suggestion, my humble suggestion is, we should know at least our mother tongue,
Absolutely.
and know it well. And when you read novels, for example, or poetry, or we cannot give that up, because if you give that up, I think you're giving up your culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And again, if I may quote Sri Krishna one more time in Bhagavad Gita, he says, Swadharme nidhanam shreya paradharmo bhayavaha. He says that your swadharma, even if you die, shreya, that's shreyas, because my dharma, I'm not talking about religion, my way of life, my culture, I'm suited for that.
True.
It's come in my blood, and the thing is, my genes, everything is. So when I try to adopt some other lifestyle, or not just lifestyle, but way of thinking, more importantly, it doesn't actually work for me.
Absolutely.
I can pretend that it is working for me, but actually it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Right? So now, having said that, English is perhaps the most commonly spoken language in the whole world. Right? So we cannot run away from that. And if you don't have for example, the same thing that we are talking about, this book, right? The 10 gunas, right? It's called Dasha Prameya. Dasha means 10. So the thing is that it is easier to explain these things in Hindi or Punjabi or Kannada, which is my mother tongue, and so on. But the thing is that instead of not knowing anything at all, it's better to at least know, if English is the only thing at least start with that. So what that will do, when you get interested, you will actually go more towards the route.
Correct.
It will automatically take you there.
True.
Because you realize the limitations. And one important thing, if I can add, is that one very important thing in this path is a guru. The concept of gurutva. And when you talk of gurus, we always think of somebody with a big beard and doing random things. And nowadays you even have this internet gurus and all these people. I'm not talking about that kind of thing, but I'm talking about a connection between someone who has jnana and someone who's seeking jnana. That connection, that relationship, because that transcends all languages.
Absolutely.
It even transcends a language, right?
That's
so
true.
A true guru can transfer, like in the modern technical world, they call it KT, knowledge transfer.
Knowledge transfer.
Yeah, so that knowledge transfer, I would actually call it JT instead of KT. It's not knowledge transfer, it's jnana transfer. So guru can transfer jnana in so many ways to a shishya. So that also, I think, is a very important aspect.
Absolutely. So for someone who is, you can say, because I have seen many friends of mine who are kind of, you can say, westernized, and now as we are talking of lot many things, especially say decolonizing Indian history, for example, is very much being talked about it. We are still
Yes.
many things which are written with from a westerner's perspective. Even spirituality, I remember one of the yoga gurus telling us, it happened long back, some 20 years back, he said, जब हमारा योग अमेरिका में जाकर योगा बन जाता है, then we realize, okay, इसमें कुछ बहुत बड़ी बात है.
Yes.
And प्राण, they have different names, cardiac, rhythmic breathing and all. And if you get it published in some very prestigious journal in the United States, you will realize, okay, this definitely has something, something meaningful. So, what would you suggest to those people who, as I said, are still quite westernized and who want to explore and traverse this path? How should they actually start with? What should be the first few steps for them?
Abhishek ji, I think that uh, my experience has been that even this so-called quote-unquote westernized people, they're westernized only on the surface.
Yeah.
If you dig a little bit, it's the same stuff is there, right? So, being having been a professor for so long in my own university, I just retired last July. So, I used to do one thing. We had I was an engineering professor. That's what I did. But we had an interfaith chapel in the university, and there we took one chapel for 1 hour, usually
Okay.
4 to 5 on a Friday afternoon, and I would go there and give a discourse, right, on about our dharma, our way of life, and so on. What I found is that many of these so-called westernized young people, see, you have to understand one thing, which is that all of us, we have a limited amount of time, energy, money, all these things, right? So if you invest any of those things, either money or time or energy, we're always looking at return on investment.
Yeah. True.
Always, right? I always say, why should I waste my time or why should I spend my money or whatever, right? So, question is in our this what I called JT instead of KT. Right?
Yes.
So especially young people, they'll say, don't sit there and give me some like in my next life what happened. I'm concerned about this life, okay?
Correct.
I'm concerned about tomorrow morning, and I have problems right now. How do I deal with that, right?
True.
So when you map our jnana to real solutions in real life,
Exactly. Exactly.
immediately, trust me, I have hundreds of people, like young people, who became so enamored by it. Matter of fact, they would say, "Sir, how come nobody taught us any of this?
Correct.
They didn't teach us in school or college, at home, they didn't teach us. We didn't know any of this, right?" And they become very, very, not just enamored, but they become passionate.
Passion.
They learn a lot, and not only that, they become involved in spreading this jnana,
Right.
right? So I think what we need are people who not, see, unfortunately, when we use the word guru, sometimes even it taken in a negative way
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about true people with knowledge who are willing to share their knowledge without any expectation.
Expectation.
See, this knowledge is not for sale.
Right.
Okay. So the question is, how can we do that? So I think in society, we need to do this. The same concept. Matter of fact, right now, as we speak, this particular book, we taught a course in Amity University in Noida for MBA students,
Okay.
right? Uh, last fall semester.
Okay.
And it's got nothing to do with religion, I think. There are all sorts of people taking it. Nobody had any problem with that, right? And then currently, this next month, actually, it's going to be taught in another university in Bangalore and so on.
Okay.
So the thing is, people are receptive. Young people are very receptive. We just need to bring it into the curriculum in a way.
So my
Right?
next question was actually related to that, that when we say, of course, ROI is very important, and they will find something interesting only if it appeals to them in that manner. So I remember I once had a chat with a psychiatrist, and he said that yoga is, he was in some conference some time back and said yoga, we kind of accept it as a line of treatment. He said it's not that I won't suggest medicines in case it's required, but yes, you should do yoga. So we are seeing a very clear, because they can see clear impact of, if
Mm-hmm.
you do this, it will help you. Not that it
Mm-hmm.
will on its own cure every problem of your life, but it will help you. So as you talk of, it being a more practical thing, something which directly appeals. So do you think what you suggested, that you're doing this in Amity in a university in Bangalore, do you think institutionalizing such knowledge in schools, in colleges through courses, maybe elective courses to
Correct.
begin with, not compulsory, do you think that is something which should be thought about by the HRD ministry, and should be kind of implemented, as I said, maybe through elective courses, if
Most,
not compulsory
most,
subjects?
yeah, most definitely. Matter of fact, I am told, I'm not very familiar, but I'm told that this is part of the new education policy.
Right.
But again, I don't know enough details to comment on that. But to answer your question, yes, um, the see, the government is one thing, but you don't have to wait for the government for the policy.
Right. Right.
For example, in Amity University, they invited, I went there and gave a lecture once, and then I met the vice chancellor. That gentleman just talked to me for half an hour, 45 minutes, and he said, "Sir, let's do this."
Oh, great.
The same thing happened in Jain University in Bangalore just 1 month ago. I met the person who started that whole university, and he talked to me for hardly 30-40 minutes, and he was so convinced. He said he called his people and said, "Let's do this."
Right.
So we don't have to wait for policies. The thing is that, I mean, that's also important. I'm not saying that policy is very important
Right.
for wholesale, large scale thing, but you also need people
Of
with
course.
the right knowledge to do that.
Right. Correct.
See, otherwise the whole thing will fall apart. You need
Absolutely.
resources, and resources come in two ways, in my opinion. One is the people resource. The other one is other things like books and things like that,
Right.
right? So we need to train people. Like I'd be happy, like if somebody were to say, you know what, I'll bring 20 people. Okay, will you come and train people in some of these things who can go teach something? I'd be more than happy, and I don't want any money, nothing. I'll spend my own money and come. Okay,
Right.
because we have something of such tremendous value
Absolutely.
that for us to not share that, for not adopting that, and rediscovering that, it's not new. We
Right.
just have to rediscover. That's all. And when you see
Absolutely.
the value, I think it'll automatically spread.
Absolutely. So cool. I think it's important that we get, more teachers like you who are looking at teaching as, in terms of being an unselfish thing to do and without expecting the rewards as such. Just hope we get more teachers than that. So I have one last question, and we'll open it to the audience. So all those who are watching, if you have any questions for sir, you can just write it in the comment box. And after this last question is answered, I will ask sir if any of you has any questions. So please feel free to write in the comment box. Sir, you talked about on your YouTube channel, you talked about a concept called philotronics. I am not from engineering background, so the electronics things would be like geek to me. How would you explain to a layman this whole concept of electronics for someone like me?
Okay, so see, the thing is that I just made up that word.
Yeah.
The thing is that most things in philosophy, right, are abstract,
Right.
right? So it's difficult to, if you cannot use some physical things, right? It is difficult to explain those things.
Right.
So I'll give you one simple example,
Yeah.
very simple example.
Yeah.
Okay. Our whole Vedic thought process is based upon the assumption that in nature there are three different gunas, traits, whatever you want to call it: Sat, Rajas, and Tamas.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, Sat is translated as good,
Yeah.
Tamas
Yeah.
as bad, and so on. It's not about good and bad, right? One is upward mobile, the other one is downward mobile, the other one is horizontal circles. So something that takes you upwards is Sat, something that takes you downwards is Tamas, and something that takes you horizontally in circles is Rajas. Okay.
Rajas.
Now, you say that to some kid, some young man, he'll say, okay, very nice, thank you, and then he'll keep living his life. Okay.
Right.
So, if you look at electronics, the most fundamental, you don't have to be an engineer. Okay. There's something called a resistor.
Yeah.
A resistor resists the flow of current. That's all it does. So when it resists the flow of current, in the process, it becomes very hot and it creates noise. An inductor, there's another thing called an inductor, where you take like a iron core or something and do a winding on that, a wire on that. Okay. And there's something else called a capacitor. So if you look at these three things, what do they do? The inductor, when you pass current, it will build a magnetic field around it. So it will store energy in the form of a magnetic field around it, not in it, around it. A resistor will only resist. That's all it will do. A capacitor, on the other hand, when you try to pass current, it will hold charge for itself. Okay. So when you talk about people and you say there is sattvic people, tamasic people, and rajasic people, I say, look, it's the same thing. A sattvic people, when energy resources go through him, that is stored in society around him.
Right.
On the other hand, if you look at the tamasic person, he'll try to keep everything for himself.
Yes.
And there are people who want to just quote enjoy, and they will unnecessarily criticize, do random things for no reason. They're not getting anything from that. They just resist it. Okay. So this mapping of the resistance, inductance, and capacitance to Sat, Rajas, and Tamas, when you say that, especially people with some science and they will say, oh, okay, I understand now.
Right.
Right. So, and this, by the way, this I can go much deeper in this, much deeper, and it turns out it is true because here's the reason why. Whether you talk of electronics or something else, right? Everything has to follow the law of nature.
Absolutely.
Right? And your body and my body also has to follow the law of nature. Our minds have to follow the law of nature. So therefore, it is just one way of explaining something which people already understand.
Right.
Right? That's all it is.
I think once again, it's absolutely beautifully explained. So, well, okay, I open it to the audience. Those who are watching, please, if you have any questions for sir, please ask. It can be related to his book or even a general question. So let me check if there are any questions. Okay, there's no question. There's one comment by Karthik, never calls Karthik. It's beautifully said, Professor Mukund. Okay, I think this came up in one of your responses. So Kanika 7, it was a great session. Undoubtedly, it was. All right, I think there are questions, but I will definitely be, putting it on my channel on YouTube. And just want to say one thing, all those watching, sir also has a YouTube channel in which we have explained several concepts in a very easy to understand manner. So please do subscribe to his his channel as well. And so thank you very much for giving your time. It was a great pleasure interacting with you. I wish you a long and healthy life, and eagerly waiting for your next book.
Thank you so much, Abhishek ji. It was a pleasure talking to you and whoever watches your channel. And my last parting comment is that uh, anybody can approach me. You know, my things are out there, whether it's you know, Twitter or whatever. One of my shishas handles many of these things. I don't do it myself, but usually those things come back to me. They tell me, say, oh, so and so is trying to. So you know, feel free to contact me. And it was nice talking to you, and I appreciate your giving me this opportunity to talk to you and your viewers also. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, namaste.